All right, everybody. As promised, we are going to get into more of the legislative branch. We're going to look at more of Article 1 of the Constitution, but we're going to be looking at that specifically talking about the legislative branch and members of Congress. We'll go ahead and get right into it. Go through some of the responsibilities that congressmen have. We understand that we, as a nation, we have local needs and then we have national needs. So an example of a local need might be money for roads, money for schools, things like that. And then we have national needs, which we're talking about laws for the entire country. How states are going to work together. What are we going to do with foreign policy? What are we going to do? Should there be some type of major war or conflict? So these are all things that members of Congress at the national level have to think about. So they're worried about their people at home. They're also worried about the nation as a whole. The people that they represent back home are the constituents, which you see here in red. It's people represented by congressmen at the local level. So, technically, they represent everybody. If you want to look at this, it's basically just anybody in their district over the age of 18 of voting age. They're really constituents. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't care about anybody younger than that, because obviously, you want everybody to be happy, and all of you guys are potential voters for them in the future. So, it's basically anybody that they're representing back home. That being said, they can't just worry about what's going on in their home district. They have to, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and they're going to make laws that are going to, affect, all Americans. This is something that, it's important to have different types of people in Congress, because we're going to have people that are going to be serving that, might have never even been to the Midwest. So they don't even understand what Midwestern farmers do. So a farm bill is going to potentially not affect them and their constituents as much up front. However, they have to take into consideration what that's going to do for the price of food, what that's going to do for, just a lot of things. It's also possible that there's going to be national laws that, will never even affect them or their constituents. A good example of this is offshore fishing. There's a lot of laws on that. There's people that are going to be their constituents that have never once had to, or never once decided to go offshore fishing, or deep sea fishing. So, that's one of those things where they're going to have to rely on their other members in Congress to help kind of guide them on that. So let's take a look at some of the conflicts that members of Congress are going to have to deal with. Okay, so if we're going to give aid to help farmers, just looking at corn, if we're giving aid to help corn farmers, and we're talking about the price of corn. Okay, we want the price of corn to be high if we're going to help farmers. Okay, so thinking at the local level, absolutely, that's a great thing. Let's help all the farmers. All right, let's have good corn prices. That's great. Well, but then you also have to think about the rest of the nation, and what's that going to do to everybody else? Now, if you're raising the price of corn, that's going to mean everything else is going to be that much more expensive. So we need to make sure, members of Congress need to make sure that they are weighing both sides of all of this. Now, really what it comes down to is they're probably going to be leaning more towards helping the local farmers, because they're going to be the ones that are going to vote for them. All right. So, when it comes down to it, you got to go with what gets you elected. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to continue to serve in Congress. All right, political parties. This is something that is never mentioned in the Constitution. When the country was founded, we didn't have Democrats and Republicans. Okay, but over time, these have become the two main parties. A party is a group of people, all right? And just think about, just a party in general. It's a group of people hanging out, okay? And a political party is going to have similar ideas about government. Okay, so that's why Democrats and Republicans, they have differing views, but both are going to want to do what they feel is best for the country. Just as a very brief overview, Republicans have conservative beliefs and they believe in small government, meaning they don't believe that the government should control as many things about people's lives. They feel that it should be more left up to individual people, maybe the local government, states, not the national level. Democrats, on the other hand, have liberal beliefs, and they believe in bigger government. They believe that the government should take a more hands-on approach in people's lives, and things should be controlled more through the government than through private business. Now, the conflicts that we have here is you have your allegiance to your party, which they're the ones that are going to help get you elected. They're the ones that are going to help fund your campaign. They're the ones that are going to help do all of this stuff for you to help you get elected to your seat in Congress. You also have an allegiance to your constituents. So if your constituents, if they voted you in and you were a Democrat, and it was kind of close, but you were a Democrat, and your constituents really start to change, and your constituents start to be leaning more towards maybe not totally a Republican, but more conservative. Are you going to go with what your party wants, or are you going to go with what your constituents want? It's easy to say, well, I'm going to go with what my party wants, but then you have the problem of you might not get reelected. Okay, if you say, well, I'm just going to go with what my constituents want, well, you might not have the funding for your next campaign. So it's a balance there, and it can be difficult most of the time if you're elected in a very conservative area and you're a Republican. Your constituents aren't going to flip on you. Same thing goes for if you're in a really liberal area and it was Democrats that voted for you. They're probably not going to flip. But some people in what you look at as kind of these purple areas, red and blue, this becomes more of a dilemma for them. All right, interest groups. Everybody says that, except for the interest groups themselves, everybody says interest groups, they're evil. They don't contribute anything. It's a bad thing because they're trying to influence votes based on their special interest. All right. We hear about the NRA being an interest group all the time. People want to paint them as evil. But there's other interest groups here too. I mean, people don't really think about the Farm Bureau as being a special interest group. Okay, but they are, and they're looking out for farmers. They're not really concerned with, what the American Medical Association, another interest group. Farm Bureau's not worried about them, just like the American Medical Association probably isn't worried about what the Farm Bureau wants. Okay, but they're trying to convince members of Congress to vote a certain way based on their special interests. Things that interest groups supply is money and votes. Okay, this sounds a little bit sketchy, but this isn't like, a back alley dealing where you're going to get a briefcase full of money and then they're going to rig an election to get votes. What happens is they will donate to your campaign based on how you voted. So it cannot be vote this way and I will give you X number of dollars. But there's kind of an understanding that is, if you're kind of going along with what this interest group likes, they're going to keep supporting your campaign. And as for votes, if your parents are a member of the Farm Bureau, you're going to get, emails or special magazines and flyers and stuff, saying, hey, we support this candidate, and these are the reasons why you should support this candidate. Okay, same thing goes for the NRA and all of these other interest groups as well. So they're trying to influence their members. They're working sort of in conjunction with the candidates. All right, now lobbyists. Okay, lobbyists, they're the ones that represent the interest groups, and they're the ones that are going to be going to the members of Congress to convince them to vote a certain way on something. A lot of times, lobbyists are former members of Congress or former staff members of members of Congress. If it is a former member of Congress, they've got access to stuff that the ordinary person doesn't have access to. In recent times, things have kind of closed down on Capitol Hill, but there has always been a gym that anybody that's ever been a member of Congress, they're able to access. Same thing for there's a barbershop that anybody that's been a member of Congress, they can go to the barbershop and they can get haircuts. It used to be haircuts for free. I don't know if that's still the case, but they can sit down and I don't know, whatever older people do when they go get their haircut and read a newspaper and talk and say, hey, by the way, this House bill, whatever, I think you should support that. So that they have access to members of Congress that the ordinary person might not have. And they're all about encouraging that member of Congress, to support a specific bill or agenda or whatever. Okay, so another responsibility that members of Congress has, they are servants to the people, and it's their job to help inform their constituents. They're going to inform them what's going on in Washington. They are the connection that people have to Washington, D.C. Okay, so our representative, Sam Graves, okay, he has offices throughout northern Missouri. He has people that work in those offices. He can be our connection to Washington, D.C. He can, you can ask him, hey, so what's going on with this law or this bill? Where's it at? And him, or more likely, the people that work for him, they're going to be able to kind of help you out and kind of give you direction on where something might be standing and what might be happening in the future. All right, they can also address constituents' issues. They can bring stuff to the floor of Congress. This has happened a number of times. One of the most notable, though, was back in the early 90s, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, they were really coming down on people about taxes. And they were, people that were late on their taxes, hadn't paid taxes in a while. I mean, this is something, yes, you have to do. But they were threatening jail time. There was harassing calls, and constituents went to their members of Congress and said, look, we're going to pay, but we just can't do it right now. And they're threatening to throw me in jail. And actually, members of Congress, this was, I believe it was Democrats or Republicans both, kind of came together and they passed some laws to make sure that the IRS couldn't harass people like this, and things that definitely changed after that. So I mean, that's a way that a lot of times we talk about members of Congress not doing anything. This is an opportunity for members of Congress to listen to their constituents, bring their concerns to the floor of Congress, and stuff actually got done. Okay, and the last thing here we'll talk about today is that simply members of Congress want to show that they care. There needs to be an emphasis on that because that's how they get reelected. We would like to think for sure that everybody that runs for an elected position, they do care, and that's why they got into it. It's not just to get a paycheck, because we're going to see later that members of Congress really aren't paid. They're paid a nice salary, but it's not like it's going to get them rich. They can make a lot more money doing something else. So they want to show that they care, because they do want to get reelected. But again, hopefully, they have this calling to serve. And that's something that, maybe not all, or maybe it's something that members of Congress can maybe do a better job of sometimes. But again, we'd like to hope that they all do care. We'll stop here for the notes today. Let's try to get these into a Google Doc. And then tomorrow we will get to a little bit more of what the jobs are for members of Congress. So I take it back. It'll be Thursday. So tomorrow I'll have just a short little, it'll be a question and answer thing for you. And then come Thursday, we'll get back to the notes. All right. Have a great day.